Hey, Eileen, is this coming in okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to jump in just before we start here. We'll start in about a minute, but I want to be on record. When you see me sipping something, this is Merchant's Craft lemon soda. It's Merchant's Craft lemon soda. The only place I have found it is the market at Birch Bay. So when you see me drinking something, this is what it is. I think they're great.
So you are
I wanted to
helping
be on.
their marketing? Is that what we're hearing here?
Well, I thought some would think that, but they'd be happy to have you come in.
But how do you know there's no rum in this coffee?
I don't.
You don't, that's right.
But you'll see, I'll switch it to the glass here and all right. We'll start right now. Good evening. The December 12th, 2024 Whatcom County Planning Commission meeting is called to order. I'll call the roll. Kelvin Barton, that's me. I am here. Atul Desmani.
Here.
Sunita Eisenberg.
Here.
Jim Hansen.
Here.
Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson. Julie Jefferson. Julie Jefferson, I see she's here, but she's still muted. Okay. And I'm going to put her down as here. Frank James. Frank James. Okay. Dominic Masseri.
Here.
And Scott Van Dalen.
Here.
Okay. All right. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, it's time for department update. Mark Personius, will you give us the update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real brief one for you guys. We're working with the council and stakeholder group on fine tuning some of the Senate Bill 5290 regulations and how we're going to address those new timeline requirements for permitting that start on January 2nd. So just to let you know, we're fine tuning that with some of the stakeholders and kind of clarifying how we're going to address that process as we go forward. We will be bringing a new ordinance forward probably in January for introduction that'll have some of those the idea is to have the 5290 requirements embedded in that ordinance and probably will take some of the things out that we talked about with you guys that weren't 5290 specific, and we'll address those later down the process. But I just want to give you a heads up on that. And that is all I got, except that if I don't remember to say it later, then I'll say it now, and that's happy holidays to everybody.
Wave it.
Okay.
Oh,
Right, thank you. So now it's time for open session for public comment. Eileen.
Chair,
We got a couple questions here.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Commissioner Desmani, go ahead.
I had a question for staff, and that's regarding the changes that are being made on 5290 related ordinance. I'm wondering, will that be coming back to the Planning Commission? I appreciate the update. Will there be anything that the Planning Commission will be re-reviewing on that, or no?
I think Atul, I don't expect to in January. I think we're gonna have stuff that was already, you guys have already reviewed and recommended. It's just some of the stuff that wasn't 5290 specific that we would like to do. We want to work a little bit more with the stakeholders on some of that internal process stuff and review stuff that we do. So there may be additional code changes coming, but one of the other things we want to do is to give us time, first quarter, second quarter of next year, to see how we're doing with those timelines and those new requirements, and then figure out if we need to make some more code changes or not. So we may be coming back to you, but I don't know yet.
Hey. Right, and I'm seeing a hand up. Is that Commissioner Desmani or Van Dalen?
Yeah, I got a comment or question.
Yes.
What's the plan for dealing with the energy code now that I-2066 took effect?
Our building official met with our legal counsel, and the understanding is that we're okay with how the code reads now. And I understand today, I think it was King County and the city of Seattle both sued, claiming that initiative was unconstitutional. So it's a little bit of unsettled law right now, but
So no changes.
no change at the moment.
Okay. Now it's time for open session for public comment. Eileen is our Planning Commission coordinator. Would you take over, please?
Yes. Welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live. The audio is being recorded and will be posted to the county website. As noted on our website, members of the public may watch the meeting or join online or by phone. During the open public comment session, speakers may not speak to items that are scheduled on the agenda for a public hearing tonight. There is no public hearing as it was closed last week. So you can speak on what topic you want to speak on. Speakers have up to 3 minutes to speak. The screen timer will show when your 3 minutes of speaking is up. Staff may also announce time up or mute your microphone if participating remotely. As a reminder, once the public comment session of the meeting has closed, members of the public may not speak unless a commissioner calls a member to ask a question. If anyone in the room would like to speak, oh, perfect. We will take members of the public in the room first, and then we will move to attendees online. I will call Gordon Montgomery, then Bill Geyer, and Alex Winger. Next. Gordon Montgomery.
Okay to speak here? In my chair? Can we hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Gordon Montgomery. I have been dealing, I'm here to ask for everyone's support to work with the city of Blaine to create a new West Blaine UGA. As members of the council and the county planning staff are well aware, the previous West Blaine UGA was taken out about 15 years or so ago. I have a piece of property. I have a vested interest in what I'm presenting to you, obviously. I had a 25 lot subdivision approved. I spent about 6.5 years and $250,000 to get that done. Shortly after that occurred, my wife got cancer, and I'm not a construction company, nor do I have multiple people working for me. So I and my wife dealt with that issue. When we got through it and she survived, I went to the county and tried to pursue my subdivision, and was told that because I only had 2 years left, I couldn't do it. So I was at a bit of a loss. Of course, I pursued different options. Some of those options were not attractive to me. Mr. Personius was very kind and generous in welcoming me into his office. He discussed at that time with me about 2 years ago that there was going to be some urban growth area reviews. Here we are. I'm still trying to work with you folks. I've worked a lot with Mr. Sidhu. I've worked a lot with the city of Blaine to get them to attempt to get an area in the old West Blaine UGA, which is currently in Whatcom County along Semiahmoo Drive. And I would like, when that comes before you, to please support their work toward achieving having that area put back into the urban growth area. I'm anxious to give you some housing, the citizens of our county some housing, and I think the state. I also have worked during this time with Senator Schumacher, or I should say State Representative Sharon Schumacher. She was of the impression that they actually back when this subdivision was denied because of the time constraints, that actually that was an incorrect assumption on behalf of the county council. Once again, I'm here to try and work with you. I ask for your support in trying to get this area back into an urban growth area. In closing, I know a lot of the reviews are based on population growth and job forecasts and whatnot. This area is very unique in that it's mostly a retirement community. It's some very beautiful view properties. And if we start building, I can assure you people will come. Thank you for your attention, and I anticipate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Geyer.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Bill Geyer, Geyer Associates, and I have a handout here both for the staff, and there's sufficient numbers, hard copy for the commissioners. I'm 48 years professional planner, certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. And I'm here this evening as provided within the GMA for continued public comment on the comprehensive plan UGA review, because that is a legislative process. What you're going to see tonight is this is a proposal for the Birch Bay UGA affordable housing area. Whatcom County has an opportunity here to comply with the GMA mandate under HB 1220, specifically to plan for and accommodate housing for affordable to all economic segments of the population. And it goes on to say in RCW 3678-070 that these are for units for moderate, low, very low, and extremely low income households. In Birch Bay, West of Blaine Road, State Route 548, and north of Lincoln Road is 116 acres as delineated in the maps that I've handed out. This area consists of 134 existing low and moderate income houses and also 65 acres of underdeveloped land. It was previously in the city of Blaine, UGA, up through 1997. The county, when it revised its UGA boundaries per my letter, was removed from that, and it was not included in the Birch Bay UGA. And presently, it's outside of the UGA zone R10A. The impacts were significant. The 134 housing owners were relegated from a UR4 designation to R10A. They are non-conforming. Commissioners should be aware that non-conforming status gets documented in any appraisal, resulting in the loan mortgage rates respectively being higher than what a normal loan would do that's in a conforming location. This is an area that has lower moderate income households that does not have access to competitive loan markets. And also it is removed from the ADU components that are allowed elsewhere in the county. These homes are valued anywhere from 50 to 75% of the average market value in Whatcom County. The other significant impact was the other 65 acres were relegated from UR4 to R10A. That removed this area from prospective development. Both of these sites, the 116 acres, are in the Birch Bay Water and Sewer District service zone. You have the map on that. And they front along Lincoln Road, which has been on the county's comprehensive plan for at least 25 years to be built as an arterial. In fact, it's been on the 6-year transportation improvement plan since 2007. It's in the current TIP for analysis and work to be built very soon in the future. I'll be here throughout tonight. If you have any questions, we request that you include this area as a suitable sustainability analysis area and add it into the Birch Bay urban growth area boundary. Thank you.
Alex Winter.
Good evening, commissioners and county staff. I'm Alex Winger. I'm the Community Development Services Director for the city of Blaine. I'm really here just to, support county staff and answer any questions you may have. I would like to just request, first I would say that, I do want to recognize the, significance of your recommendation on our growth projections from county council. But we do hope to move forward in an expeditious manner on this recommendation. We are working on our comprehensive plans too, of course, and working on our utility service plan updates, and all of that takes a lot of time, and we need those numbers to move forward with our plan. So on behalf of the city of Blaine and maybe the other small cities, we're looking forward to that recommendation coming from county council. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we have Patrick Alessi.
Patrick Allison, Birch Bay. And I'm here to speak about Blaine's high urban growth area. See, in '92, there was a decision made by the Boundary Review Board that there'd be a boundary between future Birch Bay and future Blaine, because Blaine hadn't even annexed into that area at that time. And that boundary was going to be Lincoln Road extended all the way through the point. And I ask you to respect that. Blaine, yes, Blaine wants growth. I remember attending a meeting in Blaine a long time ago when they wanted to extend out beyond a lake way out there to build something. And I attended the meeting and said, no, don't extend way out there. You can't support the infrastructure out there. It costs too much to put it out there. Well, guess what? They're dropping that off. That's okay. They're also dropping off an area near Drayton Harbor that people build houses on already. And they want that taken out of their urban growth area. That should be left in their urban growth area. But to me, it's really important that you understand the dividing line along Lincoln Road extended to the point. That's the division between Blaine and Birch Bay. The Boundary Review Board decided on that several years ago. Makes sense then, it makes sense now. I could talk more. Hey, for 1 minute, I could go on and on. Part of it is that area will drain down on Birch Bay. In fact, Birch Bay Water Sewer District is way out of the point because there used to be a little separate water district out there. And when semi-annuals started being built, they ran out of water because of the development in semi-annual. So they had to join the Birch Bay Water Sewer District. So that's why Birch Bay is out that way. And Birch Bay Water Sewer District can take care of any development that's happening in terms of paying for water or sewer, but you have to pay your way to develop. It's not, oh, let's do this, they'll bring taxes to us. No, you gotta have good planning, and that's your job. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you.
And I could talk for more.
Anyone else in the room wish to speak at this time?
Okay,
My name's Lisa Guthrie. I'm a resident of Birch Bay, the Birch Bay UGA. Thanks to the opportunity to comment on the comp plan update process. I currently serve as the vice chair of the Birch Bay Incorporation Association. So we've been studying all of these same items. And since the early 2000s, Birch Bay has had a steering committee who developed a community plan, and that was adopted as the sub-area plan. We've continued to work towards it. We are now establishing a Birch Bay Advisory Committee, which should give good communication between the groups because we aren't a city yet. But back then, as now, prime concern for our community is preserving the special things about Birch Bay. And that means understanding our critical areas, shoreline, wetlands, stormwater management, all of our ecologically sensitive areas, balancing with our resort commercial area and the needs of full-time residents, and being honest about our capacity for buildable lands with respecting all those issues, and to allow for development of needed commercial entities to serve and support our community. Right now, we're growing at urban densities, but without urban level services, and that includes commercial aspects as well. So to that end, one of our current concerns is the proposal from Blaine to come down below Lincoln Road and has in their proposal to take some of that Birch Point area that is below Lincoln Road and was originally part of what had been considered for the Birch Bay Community Plan. And without the Lincoln Road improvements and extension and better traffic management, all of that new home construction and traffic is gonna flow down to Birch Bay Drive. And Birch Bay Drive is a road we should be actively looking to reduce the use of, not increase the use of. And further, the area is already served by Birch Bay Water and Sewer District. There's water there, not sewer yet, but as a Birch Bay community member, we hope these concerns are heard, and we're here to answer questions and continue to be involved in the comp plan update. And we look forward to the outreach that started for the Birch Bay community and working with the county for a comp plan that works for all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room wish to speak?
Hi, my name is Charmin Burnham. I'm also from Birch Bay. My family bought property in 1955. So we've been there through a lot of different times of fabulous living when there was Air Force Base and Navy in Marietta and a lot of years of fun years for vacations. But I wanted to talk about, as you work through the 2025 Whatcom County Urban Growth Plan, I urge you to recognize the vital importance of including the voices of over 10,000 residents of Birch Bay in decisions that will shape the future of our community. As you know, Birch Bay is a vibrant, unique, and rapidly growing area within the county. So as you consider the plans for the urban growth, infrastructure, housing, and resource allocation, it is essential to collaborate closely with our residents to ensure the perspectives and needs are fully represented. Decisions made without adequate input from Birch Bay's community could have long-term impacts on our quality of life, our environment, and our local economy. I encourage the planning committee to prioritize the following. For example, community engagement, be open to public meetings, workshops, and surveys specifically for Birch Bay residents to gather input and foster transparency in decision-making. Birch Bay Citizens Advisory Committee has been approved by the Whatcom County Council, and I thank you for that. But I urge you not to drag the process out as to who's going to be the Birch Bay representatives will be. I mean, it's vital that you're able to include the committee in decisions you're making now with the 2025 comprehensive UGA deadline looming. When it comes to sustainable growth, plan for growth that aligns with our community's character, preserves natural resources, and addresses current infrastructure needs. And also keep in mind and acknowledge the ongoing interest in Birch Bay's potential incorporation and how the urban growth plan might support or impact this process. So including Birch Bay's voices in this decision is just not a matter of equity. It's a proactive step to create a plan that benefits all of Whatcom County. So we look forward to partnering with the council to ensure that Birch Bay's future growth reflects the vision and the values of its residents. And I thank your commitment to inclusive planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to speak? Seeing no one in the room, we will go to our attendees online. If you wish to speak at this time, please virtually raise your hand. If you are calling in, press *9. Is there anyone attending remotely wish to speak at this time? Seeing no hands. Oh, never mind. I have David Stalheim and Kaya Hayes. David Stalheim, do you wish to speak at this time?
Yes, thank you. Do you have me?
Yes.
All right, thanks. David Stahlheim, Whatcom Environmental Council. And first I want to give a shout out to Patrick from Birch Bay. It's been a long time. Celia and I need to get out there and visit your shop there one of these days. So anyhow, a little background on me. I was a planning director when the Growth Management Act was passed back in 1990. Since then, I've directed planning programs in 5 different counties in Washington and Oregon, including multiple comprehensive plan updates and urban growth area reviews. I also set up Bellingham's housing levy that provided funding for affordable housing projects. For many of you, this might be your first foray into growth management planning decisions. We used to refer to the Growth Management Act as truth in planning. What does that mean? First, the act requires that you accommodate growth. You can't plan for no growth. Second, you had to ensure public facilities and services to support development are available with the development. Third, you had to designate land that has long-term commercial significance for the production of food, timber, and extraction of minerals. Now the Growth Management Act has been amended to add a new truth in planning tool, housing. The new housing tool requires us to project housing needs for a variety of incomes, including emergency housing, shelters, and permanent supportive housing. What does this mean locally in Whatcom County? Growth projections are the foundation for setting up land use decisions, but also for planning public facilities and services, such as schools, water, and sewer systems. An elected official recently commented on how their aspirational growth targets resulted in them building capacity that proved to not be necessary and wasn't funded with development fees, leaving ratepayers to cover the increased costs for the unneeded capacity. You want the most accurate growth projection, and by state law, the Office of Financial Management prepares the most likely forecast. That's proven to be very accurate for more than 20 years. The housing tool which the state has developed indicates that 35,000 new housing units must be planned for the next 20 years. 35,000. Over 20,000 of those units are for low income. 20,000 for low income. Where is the best place for low income housing? Within urban growth areas and close to public services. What urban areas are best suited to accommodate 20,000 units of low income housing? We think the EIS should model 2 diversion scenarios. Commissioner Hansen submitted a scenario where Bellingham is allocated 60% of that growth, more than they had requested. for many reasons, this heavily urban model may be the best for both low-income housing and for the environment. We also think a different scenario should be studied where the smaller outlying urban cities should be allocated higher numbers to see if they can become strong, healthy communities with housing and jobs. Thank you for your time and best in your process.
Thank you. Kaya Hayes, do you wish to speak at this time?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Kai Hayes. I'm the Land and Water Policy Manager for Resources, a Whatcom-based environmental advocacy and education nonprofit with priority programming, including protecting the Salish Sea, freshwater restoration, climate action, and fighting pollution, all critical issues affecting the region and all very intimately tied to the comprehensive planning process and to our land use planning in general. I am commenting today to just express our strong support for the Whatcom Environmental Council's recommended action for Whatcom County Planning Commission's consideration of growth management, population projections, and the comprehensive plan update, and to support the issuance of these recommendations to the Whatcom County Council by the Planning Commission. On the whole, WEC's recommendations outline a balanced, practical, and forward-thinking approach to planning for growth of our region in the coming decades. We want to especially emphasize the following points in their letter that we support and are in alignment with our own vision for planning, and that is agreement on the recommendation for no action on a multi-jurisdiction resolution that includes allocation of growth before the EIS is published and before the public has an opportunity to comment. We feel strongly that the EIS should include the 3 scenarios outlined by WEC, which would give a little bit more of a detailed look by modeling different allocation ratios in the Bellingham UGA versus some of the other UGAs, and would provide some of the more detailed information that has been requested by elected officials hoping to inform their recommendations. We also support WEC's stance on encouraging growth in the UGAs, concentrating it around existing infrastructure and out of floodplains, and really support the idea that employment allocation should be proportional to the population growth allocations in order to avoid sprawl and really offset the potential for the bedroom community effect to be heightened and exacerbated, something that we're already starting to experience, rural and urban residents alike in Whatcom County as we grow. And finally, we support the policies outlined by WEC that emphasize the need to significantly divert growth from the current 9,000 people estimated for rural lands and resource lands in the county. If we don't do that, we're effectively limiting the county's ability to achieve their goals around infrastructure costs, limiting sprawl, and climate impact mitigation and response costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Darcy Jones. Do you wish to talk at this time?
I just wanted to thank the commissioners for continuing this discussion and listening to some of the comments tonight. I could tell you, I think we all have a lot of common ground in our goals here, and I really appreciate that. I've tried to keep up with reading a lot of the comments that have come through from the county website. One important issue I wanted to bring up with regard to population projections and the idea of, well, I guess first of all, even trying to adopt one for the multi-jurisdictional resolution up front is, as I understand, not entirely necessary. I do understand there's, especially some of the cities, they need to have some guidance. There might be another way to achieve that. But if we're talking about trying to adopt an overall county projection, I would have to say we really need to be thinking a little somewhat higher than the medium. The medium is, as the Leland Consultants Council is, the medium is a reflection of what our trend is. It's just a projection of the trend of the last 10 years. That's really what it is. And as we've seen in the last 10 years, that there's been significantly more sprawl and out into the rural areas than we had planned for or wanted. There's clearly a significant housing affordability crisis. So following the the trajectory we're on with regard to population projections is, I think, a mistake. Now, we need to look at each of the jurisdictions and have a clear understanding, a realistic understanding of what the capacities really are, not necessarily relying on speculative plans or rezones. The city of, and and water supply, for example. Now, the city of Bellingham is a bit unique in that their House Bill 1110 applies to the city of Bellingham. They actually are not, they're legally allowed right now to increase densities and across their borders, where a lot of the other areas, really are planning to. I get it and I appreciate it. I learned a lot in the last meeting, but I would absolutely say that we need to be thinking above the medium in order to to ensure we have adequate lands and that those lands are allocated correctly. Again, I think in the last meeting I mentioned allocation is a really critical element here, to allocate the population to the right places that can be prepared to accept the housing, and including the lower income housing components. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anyone else participating online wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one, Commissioner Chair Barton, no one else
Okay.
wishes to speak at this time.
Thank you, Eileen. So next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the November 14th meeting. So, Commissioner Hanson.
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions. One is, and I don't know if our staff or the Blaine staff should answer this one, but we've heard a lot about the UGAs, which is not on our agenda today. And in my understanding is we will act upon UGA expansion or contraction proposal. So my first question is, could I have a clarification for everybody about that process? And then I'll ask the second question.
Yeah, this is Matt Ahmed from Planning and Development Services. So yeah, UGA's proposals will come from the cities at a later time. However, in their proposals for population and employment growth, there is a section on preliminary land capacity analysis. So, population growth, housing, employment, those can be accommodated through, potentially UGA expansions, or for housing, increasing densities in UGAs. So although UGA proposals are not before you, the numbers may have implications for UGA sizing, which is I think it was in the November staff report. So.
Thanks. And I have a question for David Stahlheim. One question is, customarily, and are ESA, are growth allocations usually considered before the EIS, or should the EIS consider those growth allocations? And the other one is, I was a little confused about the Leland analysis of population growth. My understanding of how it was presented us in May was that the middle projection was strongly the most accurate. So maybe Mr. Stalheim, could you comment on those?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, if I understand the questions, so the first was regarding the growth allocations before the EIS, and in all the jurisdictions I've ever done this in, I've never seen growth allocations happen up front of the process that are allocated to urban areas. The only decision usually is a countywide forecast that's done. That's the only thing that I've ever seen done. And I think Matt and the staff have documented that this was done here in Whatcom County back in for the 2016 update. So they had a resolution in 2014, and I think that was the first time it's ever been done in Whatcom County for that. So yeah, so I've worked in 4 other counties other than Whatcom County. I've never seen that process happen up front before you get other information, consider all the things. And part of that is also related to the issue that you need the numbers to start doing your planning. And you know, I've had a good conversation with Matt about this, and I think the planners are in this catch-22 about this, because you do need numbers to start doing things. But as Matt has also told the commission, is that the numbers help you start doing the planning, but you can't rely on the numbers because it's a non-binding resolution. So you're saying 2 different things. So every jurisdiction can go ahead and do their planning for the numbers that they want to plan for, because they can't really rely on them at the county council level at this point anyhow, and you really shouldn't do that. With respect to the Leland report, Leland had a lot of different things. One is the kind of the countywide forecast about the OFM for the county, and it definitely characterized that the OFM middle or medium projection has been entirely accurate, and it's because it's based on analysis of statewide migration allocated to different areas and the review of births and deaths. And so at a countywide level, it's been entirely accurate, and it's proven so for the last 20 plus years in Whatcom County. Where they started doing things based on trends is where they started allocating it to the urban areas. And that's where those are policy decisions. And that's where they started using the trends. But Leland did not use the trends. They used the OFM medium, and said that OFM medium was the most likely forecast for the county. So hopefully that answered your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff or the other attendees that made public comments? Okay, so now we'll move along. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to put this in for the record. Commissioner James arrived about a minute after, or right after I finished roll, and I had not had a chance to put that on the record.
Yes, I jotted down.
Thank you. Okay, so now let's move on to approval of minutes for November 14th meeting.
Ms. Frank,
Commissioner James.
I'd move approval of the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, Eileen, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Van Dalen,
Yes.
Jefferson. Jefferson. James,
Yes.
Moseri,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Eisenberg,
Yes.
Deshpani,
Abstain.
Barton,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, and so now we'll move along to our meeting topic, which is a work session about population and employment projections.
Excuse me, Kelvin, isn't there a point where we're supposed to make reports of outside contacts we've had and that sort of thing?
You can make that right now if you'd like.
Okay, I just wanted to let everybody know that I had a conversation with Mayor Corthius of Linden about their water availability yesterday, and that I had previously discussed with council member Donovan some issues having to do with these processes we're considering tonight.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Right. Commissioners, where would you like to start? Commissioner James.
Thanks. I've got a few comments I'd like to make initially. I was really happy to have both the discussion last time and then some time to read and think and talk with a variety of people about the issues that were raised. And I have a few observations. One is that it doesn't make sense to me to move forward with the proposal that was put out prior to reviewing the EIS. I think there's valuable data in it. It will bring insights. There are issues. The letter we got about Linden Water is, I think, a fairly one-sided view of that issue, and we really need the full view of that issue, which will be shaking out in the EIS. And some of the proposals, for example, Thumass, fairly assertively wanting to grow and yet still having in their presentation extensive flooding in the property they already have. I mean, I think we really need to look at these environmental issues and substantially have them inform our process. The second thing is that I do statistics and I do planning for health programs, and I have total confidence. OFM has been bulletproof in their projections. I just don't know why we would accept numbers other than OFM's, and I would have to be convinced there was some compelling and good reason, and I haven't seen that. I think it's good to get all the proposals from all the smaller jurisdictions on the table now. Everybody needs to know, and it needs to be an open process, but I don't think we need to approve any document that the one that's been proposed to date. I see no reason to do that. The law doesn't ask us to do that. It's not something that I think we should be doing until we have the EIS review and a more complete understanding of the issues, which I don't believe we have to date. So I would like to make a motion, actually. And I know it's awkward to make a motion at the beginning, but I want to move that we adopt the Whatcom Educational Council proposal and send that forward to council. And once we make that motion, we can, of course, discuss it.
Commissioner Hanson.
I'll second that, and I would also reference the findings of fact associated with that.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'm certain that Commissioner James is interested in the discussion and wants to get that started. So.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody's had a chance to read that proposal. I think it's a useful document, and look forward to the discussion.
Commissioner Hanson, did you want to speak again?
Well, all the time, but I think I'll give somebody else a chance to talk.
Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, that was a big motion to get all at once at the very beginning. And I agree with a lot of, there's parts of this letter and recommendations I agree with, some of it I don't. I think for me, I like the idea of the different proposals and getting the EIS and more information on it, but how does this give guidance to the cities and the county and the jurisdictions to plan and move forward? I don't know that this addresses that for them, which is a pretty big piece of this.
I mean, can I maybe address that a little bit?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so under the Growth Management Act, County and city comprehensive plans have to be coordinated and consistent. And, we will adopt in our comp plan projections for each urban growth area, the 7 city urban growth areas, and then also the county unincorporated UGAs. And they will adopt population, housing, and employment projections for their urban growth areas. So at the end of the day, we have to, talk with the cities. We might have to negotiate. We might have to discuss. We've kind of done that, up to this point with the city proposals. But, we really shouldn't, we and they shouldn't be adopting comp plans that are inconsistent. So it is a discussion. And most of the city planners, if not all of them, are here. So I don't know if there'd be an opportunity for some of them to chime in, on this. I think it would be helpful and productive to have that engagement from the cities.
Could
But
I
we
just ask a question, sir?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, what is the value of us actually approving this for the cities or for us when they've already made very clear what their thinking is? I mean, we have plans with specific numbers. And I think I don't see a lot of value in, is there any, how would it be different from us not approving it versus us approving it? Us approving it is not binding on anybody.
Right.
It doesn't bind them. It doesn't bind us. It doesn't bind the council. I mean, there's no binding to it.
Right.
How would that happen?
Madam, go ahead, answer that.
I mean, it won't be binding. Nothing will be binding until it's, adopted. But this idea was brought up in the last update by some of the small cities who wanted, some type of indication from the county and from, everybody as to what they might be looking at and planning for. And last time, the non-binding resolution was adopted by the county council and city councils in 2014. The draft and final EISs came out in 2015, and the comp plan was adopted in 2016. And I think there was changes for 3 in the final, comp plan. There was changes for Bellingham, Birch Bay, and Nooksack in terms of the population numbers. The rest of them remain the same. But it does kind of give just kind of an early indication, and coordination between the jurisdictions. So again, if any of the small cities, if it's allowed, who want to address that might be helpful. But
Commissioner Desmani, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would very much like that. I mean, I believe what's happening here is that OFM does do a good job, and they're coming from the state level. Their job is to look at aggregate trends and correct and project them, and they've got a lot of talent in that area. At the same time, there is a desire at the county level to be responsive to municipalities. And I think that the task of the Planning Commission is to find a way to honor the intent of council and the county executive and staff to give small cities in particular a voice in the process of developing our projections. So I think it really would be helpful to hear from small city planners or all the planners who are present and able to comment. I would like that, Chair.
Okay. It looks like we have a lot of the planners here. And what Commissioner Desmani has asked is for you to tell what you would like to take an opportunity here. So if you would please answer, we would all like to hear what you're interested in. So if some of you can answer that question for us, that would be awesome. And Commissioner James, go ahead.
I think they told us what they're interested in last time. I think what I'd like to know is, why do they believe their projections are better than OFM's?
Okay.
Why do they believe they're more accurate than OFM would be?
Okay.
I mean, it's easy to want things, but they've got to be wanted in a disciplined, practical, realistic fashion. And so why is that better? And for Linden in particular, that water issue is not resolved. And I'd like to see both sides of that. I'd like to have them tell us why they believe the letter we got is going to prevail over the end. And from SUMAS, I'd like to know, with all the flooding problems they already have, how do they plan to accommodate more growth with, especially the amount they're asking for, with the flooding problems they already have, without, at least as far as I've seen, a realistic plan for improving that flood management. So those are the kinds of things I'd like discussed, if we're going to discuss them one at a time.
Okay, and let's, we have
Commissioner
someone,
Chair Barton, we have Alex Winger, here with us. That's why I raised my hand. That could
Okay.
answer the question.
I mean, I already spoke a little bit. I'd like to speak again, but I see some of the other cities raising their hands. Let's give them a shot.
and
Thank you.
what, go ahead for us right now, and then we'll work our way through this.
Oh, sure. Oh, I'll jump in there. I didn't mean to cut in line, fellow planners. Yeah, this is Alex Wenger with the city of Blaine, and I agree. The OFM medium is the most accurate projection. Especially looking at the last 10 years. But if you look at the last 10 years, they've been anything but average. I mean, we've had a global pandemic. It's been not a typical decade. So when I look at our area, it's one of the most desirable places, I think, in the world to live. It's fabulous. I mean, we all live here, right? So this is a great place. And I think as it can, we continue to, promote this area, it's, going to continue to grow. And I was speaking a little bit about the expediency of getting some numbers to plan on. We would try our very best to honor this non-binding resolution. Like, those numbers are what we're going to put in our plans. We're, rounding third base on, all of our utility comp plans. And, it's fairly inexpensive for the city of Blaine to pay me to write goals and policies related to planning. But when we have to hire teams of engineers to plan our sewer system, water system, electrical system, and stormwater system, that is a lot of taxpayer money that we're spending on that. And so we really want to make sure we don't have to do that again. And so, if we plan on some certain numbers and then those get changed later down the road, we have to go back and then tweak those plans and pay to have that done. It's expensive and time consuming. So, that's just some of the reasons that are kind of, at the top of our priority list right now. So I'd be happy to talk more, but I defer to the other planners.
All right, I appreciate that. Commissioner Hanson, I know you have your hand up. Can you hold just for a little bit longer? And Michael, and I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly, Serbon.
You sure did. Thank you. So I point out that the OFM provided a range, and we could debate all night whether the medium is the most accurate or not. We won't know until we get into the future. Planning for growth, it doesn't promote sprawl. I'll throw it out and argue with anybody all night.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt just for a moment. And which community?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you represent?
My name is Mike Serbon. I work for the city of Ferndale. I'm the community development director.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So planning for growth doesn't promote sprawl. Poor policies, goals, land use regulations promote sprawl. Protecting low quality wetlands promotes sprawl. But we could talk about that all night. There's a range that OFM provides. Planning for growth is responsible. Trying to accommodate it is responsible. I'm going to tell you, I agree with a fair amount of information in the WEC letter, and I agree with a fair amount of information in Mr. Jones' letter as well. I think a good thing to do would overlap those two and see where they interconnect. We need some guidance, whether it's non-binding or not. If you think it's non-binding, it's not worth anything, then go ahead and recommend approval of it. But we need some guidance. So we can go off on our own and we can make decisions about how we plan for things, but that might result in SUMAS planning for some pretty large facilities for a fair amount of growth, where they'll have to come back and redo that work at a very high cost. So I think what the small cities are looking for, I won't speak for Bellingham because they're very big. But I think what we're looking for is we're looking for some guidance. You know, we told you what we want. We've provided you proposals. We're looking to see if you think we're in the right realm or not. You know, Ferndale, I'll speak for, we're the fastest growing city over the last 10 years. We can accommodate growth. We've been thoughtful about planning for infrastructure, making improvements to our water, wastewater treatment plant. We have good regulations and policies in place, annexation blueprint, you know, all sorts of things in place to prevent sprawl. We just need some guidance. We need a decision. While we could debate all night long whether the projections should happen or don't happen, or whether we should do the EIS now or not, I need some kind of guidance that tells me that what I'm going to spend a fair amount of time, energy, and effort on is in the realm of reality. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
All right. I've had some conversation on a certain core issue about our recommendations with Councilmember Donovan. And one thing he was felt he wanted to clarify to me is that the Planning Commission does not advise planning staff. The Planning Commission does not advise the executive. The Planning Commission does not advise the small cities. It advises the council. Now, as per the non-binding interjurisdictional resolution, sure, the cities can probably figure out how many people they're more or less how many people they're going to take, and I think they probably want to use the middle model for that. And I'm encouraging the cities, particularly Ferndale and Bellingham, to take quite a bit of the share of the population growth. But the real issue is distribution, not what level is. I think it's going to be pretty clear that if you build that, okay, the environmental activists are on our case. Oh, you should take the low model, and we're telling them that's not realistic and it's not responsible, because if you don't plan for growth, you're not going to be ready to accommodate it. On the other hand, if we plan for the high model without any reason other than anecdotal reasons to plan for that, then we do encourage more migration by overbuilding. So I think the middle model is definitely the one to go for, and that if we put that to the EIS, we have 3 different visions of how that distribution could go, and we can look at the impacts, both social and environmental, of those 3 different models, and then that will help us when we craft the provisions of the comp plan update. So I'm supporting Frank's motion, and I think we'll do nothing but learn more by putting out the 3 reasonable options for EIS, and I have faith that the cities will be able to do realistic planning in concert with that.
Okay. Eileen, are you able to read Commissioner James's motion again?
Yes, but first we have Commissioner Moseri that wishes to speak.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Moseri.
Yeah, I was curious if anyone can say how long they think an EIS on this would take to complete. Just if you want to take example, what's been proposed in the motion that was made to do an EIS on these 3 different proposals, what would something like that take, and how long before that information would be back?
So the SEPA official, Mark, basically determined that an EIS would be required. I think it was in January or something, or maybe December. And the county had a public comment period on the scope of the EIS in January and a public hearing. And Mark, as a SEPA official, issued a final scoping document last February. So we're down the way, on the draft EIS alternatives. The consultant is analyzing those and so forth. And we're hoping to get a draft EIS issued in the first quarter of next year. And then a final by June. The consultant's contract expires at the end of June because the state funding runs out then. So hopefully, it might be optimistic, but February or March.
And would that be that? So it sounds like that work's already being worked on. Is that just, that's just looking at what's the proposal from the counties and this county and the cities? It would, that timeline could change if we're putting in now 2 new proposals to compare to it.
Right. So this meeting and this process with the Planning Commission is really on the population and employment for that multi-jurisdictional resolution. The EIS alternatives have been developed and the consultant is analyzing those. The county and city have done a number of things with that, and the consultant has distributed based upon those alternatives to transportation analysis zones, which was a little bit of a process. And the COG has the Council of Government has a consultant running those. So we're kind of down the path on that. Now with the final EIS, there will be a preferred alternative, which could be different from any of the ones studied in the draft. So there will be opportunity at that point for the SEPA official to come up with something different based upon discussion and, Planning Commission, Council, cities, and so forth. But at the end of the day, we need to coordinate with the cities and have coordinated and consistent comp plans. And even our comp plan talks about coordinating with the cities for growth projections, capital planning, that type of thing. So although you do make a recommendation to the council, we do have a comprehensive plan that kind of, governs that and governs the county's action. So, and one of those actions is coordination. So.
And can you just say one more time, what alternatives and proposals is the EIS currently looking at? Because what's on the motion on the table is asking for potentially ones that it's not currently looking at.
Right.
So which ones?
So we have a no action alternative, which is going to keep the projections in the existing comp plan, which is kind of a low growth alternative. Alternative 1 is the OFM medium, distributed according to historic shares over the last 10 years. And then I'm going to jump to alternative 3, which is the consultant technical report high, which again is distributed according to historical shares. And then alternative 2 is kind of what you have before you, which is the conglomeration of city and county proposals, which is kind of between that medium and high projection.
So it's looking at what was originally proposed in the last packet. That's what the EIS is currently looking at.
Right. Well, it's got 3 action alternatives plus the no action alternative. So what you looked at in the last packet, we might have included the whole thing. I can't remember, but
I think you did.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Desmani.
So what would be the implication of looking at additional alternatives? Time implications.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to talk to the consultant about that. I mean, under our county code, the SEPA official, holds the hearing, takes a comment and all that and determines the alternative. So we're quite a ways down the road with that. Part of our problem, a big part of our problem is that, like I mentioned, the state funding runs out June 30th. And so we really have to be done with the final EIS by then. So this would probably make it difficult, if not impossible, to do that. When I say this, changing the EIS alternatives for the draft at this point.
Then, does that mean that what is being proposed by the Environmental Council would be difficult or impossible to comply with?
Well, there's 2 components. One is changing the EIS alternatives at this point in the process. That would be very difficult because we're down the road. The consultant is, reviewing those and developing the EIS, as we speak, so to speak. The other is the non-binding multi-jurisdictional resolution, which is essentially alternative 2 in the EIS. So there's 4 alternatives in the EIS. That's one of them.
Thank you. If I could, Chair, ask another question of staff.
Yes.
So, this issue of working with municipalities in the county. I mean, of course, there's a long tradition in local government of that being the practice, and there's this customary practice we have, that maybe I'd like to know is that just customary practice, or is it statutorily defined, this consultation?
So I would say it kind of on three levels. At the state law, the GMA says that at the end of the day, what we adopt, the city and county comp plans have to be coordinated and consistent. So
Okay.
that's kind of the bottom line. So how do we get there? We talk, we discuss, we engage. The county comprehensive plan has a number of policies that talk about coordination with the cities. I think the countywide planning policies do too. And we have an interlocal agreement with the cities, basically saying that we'll work together. So, discussion and engagement and, trying to come to some consensus is important to reach our end goal, which is coordinated and consistent comp plans.
Commissioner Hanson.
Well, thank you. Well, my problem with, okay, it may or may not be realistic at this point to change the EIS, but I have a big problem with considering the three alternatives were being presented as being alternatives, because they really aren't. They're just, it's just like the three bears, the little bowl of porridge and the middle bowl of porridge and the big bowl of porridge with Goldilocks. Well, it's all three of them are bowls of porridge. And what we want to look at is different ways to distribute the population, not just distributing it the same way, more with greater or lesser amounts of population growth. And that's why I think it's really valuable that we look at it and not just have one option. So even if we somehow can't get the votes to pass this whole proposal, certainly point number one, do not approve the multi-jurisdictional resolution is solid. Point number two, adopting the middle range projection is really solid. And four and five, talking about encouraging growth in urban areas and transfer of growth from rural resource lands, those sorts of things to protect our rural lands. Those are all really solid. But minimally, we can't pass these three bowls of porridge and say that we're providing different projections, because we really aren't. Basically, it's one projection, take it or leave it, because two of them aren't at all realistic.
I did want to just mention too, we have county staff here, climate staff and flood staff, because those issues came up last time. If you have any questions for them also.
Commissioner Desmani.
Yeah, I mean, I really do agree with the comment about the other two alternatives of the three really aren't realistic. So it's not an efficient honestly, it doesn't feel like an efficient use of resources to look at two alternatives that are clearly not realistic.
Eileen, are you able to read Commissioner James's motion to us again?
Yes. I have, the motion was to adopt Whatcom Environmental Council's proposals and move it onto council.
And do you have in front of you, or perhaps Commissioner James, do you know, do you have it right there in front of you exactly what their proposal is?
I do. I think we all got it in writing, but it's quite long.
I saw that and I did read it, and I'm trying to remember what all it says. But the short story.
So the short story is really that we should really adopt not the wishful numbers for population projection, but adopt the OFM median numbers. That's one thing. The other is that we really should have the environmental information before we go making definitive decisions about this. So having this kind of, I mean, it's great that they brought it to us. It's great that we listened to it. I have questions about it. I still like to hear and it's an honest question, I'm not being rhetorical, why do they not accept the OFM numbers? I mean, it's an interesting question to me. If there's some compelling reason, I'd just like to know what it is. Because in my experience with those numbers, they're very accurate, very reliable, and they'd be the best numbers to plan with. So I think you'd have to read it all, but essentially those are the key elements: is having environmental information before these ultimate decisions are made, and secondly, use those mid-range numbers from OFM as a basis for planning. And kind of my question is, if not, why not? You know, when I was coming into work every day in the evening, the traffic on I-5 is stopped, absolutely stock still. You have to stop where Meridian intersects the freeway and where the Mount Baker Highway intersects the freeway. The fix for that, I was thinking about, is going to be extraordinarily expensive. To build a bigger freeway there to accommodate the traffic that's coming in, that's an example of where we have abjectly failed, where our planning has been completely inadequate, and where the fix is incredibly expensive, and where we're ultimately going to have to get state and federal assistance to fix that sort of problem. And I think if we keep allocating large amounts of population to rural areas in the north part of the county, we're going to keep running into problems like that there's no practical solution to, and we're all going to suffer from the impacts of that in everyday life. That's one of the things that motivates me to want to say that 60% of the land, 60% of the population really should come back to Bellingham, and ideally in the central business district, and get some higher rise housing that's less expensive, that can accommodate that kind of growth, where people don't need cars, where they can go to the restaurant, they can go shopping without owning an automobile. We're never going to get that if we keep expanding into the county. So I prefer those numbers for those reasons. And I believe that if somebody has a compelling reason why that's not realistic, our job in these public hearings is to hear about it. So I don't want the numbers. I want to know why from the small cities. And that might be helpful. Maybe there's a compelling reason. But at least the things that I've heard so far, both environmentally and in terms of numbers projections, are not compelling. I don't think we should approve it. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I saw this as a reasonable place to start a discussion, and a better place to go than the other alternative we were considering. So that's my view.
Okay, thank you. We have two commissioners, but Michael Cerrone, Ferndale, go ahead.
Yeah, you will have the environmental information, Commissioner, before you make the final decision. We just need to be able to plan and understand if we can accommodate the growth in the individual cities. But you will have it before the final EAS is approved. Now, I-5 in Bellingham, I find that comment you made interesting because I do drive I-5 every day. I live south of Bellingham and I work in Ferndale. I'm like most families, my wife also works. The likelihood of both of us finding a job in the exact same location is fairly difficult. I lived in Portland, in Southeast Portland. I worked on the west side, as did my wife. Towards the end of my job, I worked on the east side. It's far nicer commute. You put more growth in Bellingham, you're going to exacerbate the I-5 issue. The I-5 issue is there because there's no parallel north-south networks in Bellingham. Everybody gets on the freeway to go one exit or two exits. That's where the issues are. Some of the solutions there are fairly simple. Ramp meters. There are some actual interchanges in Bellingham that, as I understand, are contractor interchanges that were designed primarily to assist with building the freeway, but were kept for convenience reasons. That's where you see the accidents. That's where I see the accidents every day. There's not enough of a merge zone. People are getting on the freeway. They're going too slow. The people in the right lane don't want to have to merge. They pull in the left lane. And that's where the accidents are almost every day. I understand a lot of the concerns that you guys are talking about, but you know, putting all the growth in Bellingham is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to be cheaper. You may have a better, urban form, but you can invest in the smaller communities. you can work with the smaller communities to have better transportation systems. We have new state laws that have come out this year that we all have to implement to do multimodal designs. We can now start collecting impact fees for those. Again, look at where the WEC is and look at where Mr. Jones are. Overlap those two. And look at where that overlap is. I'm going to tell you that addresses some of your concerns. To me, the rural area is for farm and forest land. We should be farming out there. There should be forest land. There should be things out there to support them. You know, one of your counselors would like slaughterhouses out there. I think they should be out there. But allowing a lot of growth out there just exacerbates everything. But that's up to you, the county, to make that decision. And if you want to make that decision as part of your recommendation, that is appropriate. If you think that 9,000 is too high, well, then give us a clue to that, because the rest of us are going to have to accommodate that. If you think it should be 6,000, that's what you guys should be doing this evening. But I don't think the solution is putting everybody in Bellingham. I don't think I-5 will get any more manageable. And I don't see that being a positive way
So
forward.
nobody said all the roads should go in Bellingham. I mean, what I said was 60%. That's a long ways from all. And I think there needs to be growth for Ferndale too. But I mean, those are the things we need to talk about. Right? I mean, it's not all growth in Bellingham, but the majority of growth in Bellingham.
So let's just hold on here. We've got two commissioners that have had their hands up for quite a while, and I see that Roland Harper has had his there for a while, and then Chris Behe. But Commissioner Desmonte, go ahead, and then Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to hear from Chris and Roland most of all. Just to preface that, though, is that, you know, what I'm interested in is finding ways where we can find that kind of a compromise between what cities or municipalities are asking for, small and large, and what Whatcom Environmental Council is proposing. And to me, the I-5 discussion is a big distraction. I really don't want to talk about I-5 anymore. I've been in lots of I-5 conversations, and this isn't the right place for that. So,
Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to point out that in the proposals that we're looking at, I think we're looking to see where that the jobs and the growth go proportionately, and not try to, and that's something that could be looked at through the EIS, looking at Whatcom Environmental Council's large city versus small city growth, and perhaps we'll come up with a balance, but it needs to be based on job availability, not just random. Let's just stick them there. But in terms of can we look at this EIS in a different way in the timing? I'd like to see if we ask for Council Member Donovan to speak to that issue.
Okay. All right. That's a good note. Roland Harper, go ahead and please identify the community you are with.
All right. Thank you, Roland Harper, Sea Home Planning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So I work with the cities of Everson, Nooksack, and Sumas, and have been doing planning work with them for over 20 years. So been through comp plan updates a couple of times. And just a few things to clarify and to share, you know, kind of the small city perspective. But one important clarification, there was talk about the OFM numbers. Actually, OFM provides a bracket of a low and a high, and the one that's been focused on here is the medium. I think that's what most people are saying. We should select the medium, and that's a county-wide number. OFM does not prescribe or predict anything for each individual city in conjunction with that middle projection. And so that's, I think, appropriate then that it asks us to look at how are we going to allocate that growth. Let's say we all agreed, just for the sake of discussion, we agreed to go with the the medium, would we take the Leland Report's approach, which is to look at just the most recent 10-year period and the share of growth that's gone to each city and the rural areas or non-UGA areas, look at what's happened just in the last 10 years and use that to allocate growth going in the future? I would suggest that we'd have a fair amount of agreement that we'd like to see a reduction in the share of growth in the rural and resource areas. And that therefore would coincide with an increase in the share of growth in the urban growth areas. So the consultant report and the EIS alternatives give us a very simple bracketing based on this 10-year historic shares. We'd like to look more realistically at what's been happening in the small cities. And we've been seeing the small cities as a haven for more affordable growth and development over the last several years. And in fact, seeing a tremendous boom in growth, especially in Nooksack and Everson. And so I could give you a couple of numbers. If we went with the straight middle number as projected by the consultant for the medium projection for Nooksack, Nooksack already has development that's been a very affordable haven for folks. We would already have developments that are in the ground or infrastructure being installed or plats being approved to accommodate that growth within the first 4 years of a 22-year planning period. And so we can't be as kind of just, it's not so simple in our thinking that it's whatever's been happening in the 10-year period, that's what's going to happen over the next 22 years in terms of share of growth. The alternative, if we try to crunch down the small cities, is that you're going to be helping to support proliferation into those rural and resource lands. And I think, again, we'd all agree that's not, of all things, that's what we least want to see happen. Having rural alternatives that are in cities is far better than pushing people out into what could be, sprawling rural development. Now, in terms of the timing, we are trying to coordinate with the county. We're trying to share, have a meet and greet with, here's what we're looking at and here's why. We try to put it in our proposals. We are up against a time crunch, and as Mr. Stahlheim said, a catch-22. We didn't even get any of our state funding to get started on this till probably February of this year. Whereas in 2016 comprehensive plan update, we were able to start a consultant working in 2013 and then had time to work through all of those capital facilities plans. The non-binding multi-jurisdictional resolution helps us get some feedback from, let's say, the county council, maybe with or without your recommendation, as to whether we're on the right track. And our funding, as Matt said, it came late and it runs out in June. And the smallest of the cities have very limited staffs. We have very limited resources. We have no ability to make a plan and then go back and redo a plan, especially when we're talking about not only capital facilities, transportation facilities, now housing by income band. So if we have to, we'll get going and we already are. But if we end up with the rug pulled out from us, at the 11th hour, it's going to be tough and expensive for us to bring this all home and try to meet the deadlines under the Growth Management Act. So thank you very much.
So Roland, I have a question for you. For the three cities, what would be their, let's just say we have our low, medium, and high. What would the three cities, what would be their preference?
So you're talking about for Everson, Nooksack, and Sumas, and when you say low,
Yes.
medium, and high, you're talking out from the
Yeah.
technical report?
Yes.
All right, so these are, individual answers for each city. And
Yes.
there's other planners that, that are working with each of those cities. But Everson has selected the high allocation. And I will tell you that we did a quick accounting of development activity, and we could easily build out the full high allocation in 10 years, because its growth in Everson is booming. And that's because it's a desirable and affordable place for a mixture of housing types, and including densification. But that's where Everson is. Nooksack has selected a number that is higher than the high. And as I mentioned, if we took the middle allocation, we have growth that's already in the ground, houses up, or plats approved, or plats pending, that middle projection would be done in 4 years. Because we're talking small numbers, but now big developments that are coming. And so it's easier to, if you get real booms, to use that up quickly. So we've tried to present a modest picture in our proposal. I hope you've gotten not just the PowerPoint presentation, but the written proposal that has a year-by-year analysis for Nooksack of the number of units that we expect, with the ones that are in hand, in the ground, and then a more modest tapering off as growth slows over the 22 years. And I think for Sumas, they've picked a number that's just in between the middle and the high, closer to the high. And they'd probably have to, Carson from Sumas would have to speak to that a bit more. One other item, all of our, the allocations of population and employment in the consultants report, those all have the consistent ratio between employees and population. And it's based on what's observed statewide. So we are planning for a consistent balance between jobs and population. And Sumas may have a bit of an exception to that, because there was encouragement that also came from the county executive to really plan for an expansion of an industrial district up in Sumas. So that may be one spot where we've deviated from that ratio, but it's very consistent throughout the consultant report and our chosen projections.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Chris Behe, can you hold just a little longer? We have Todd Donovan was asked, I can't remember which commissioner asked for him to come on, but Todd Donovan, go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just one quick point to observe. I mean, the Planning Commission is advisory to the county council. It is staffed by the executive. Very grateful for that. And actually, first of all, so like, this is an amazing conversation. I'm super grateful for y'all doing this. But I guess the cliche I'll have here, our council has not been able to give the Planning Commission really meaningful direction, I think, about what we want, and that's on us. But I think I'll go for the cliche here. We're putting like multiple carts before a horse here. Like, so this is all staff-driven conversation about what staff needs to do, and staff is telling you. And I guess I would, as an advisory body, want to hear what this Planning Commission, and I know you need that input, but like staff needs these things before these deadlines or whatever. Council can change the deadlines. Council can find funding to change these contracts and refund these contracts. So I guess, like, don't worry about what staff's telling you about those sorts of deadlines. And the other cart before the horse. This the EIS thing that is a meaningful discussion to happen. That I want to hear what you people are thinking about. Do we need to do that before the population projections or whatever? And like, how do we do the population projections? But it's been great listening, but it's also like super frustrating to hear how staff driven this is from the cities, from the county. We're not getting direction, and part is like our executive's not giving clear direction, but Matt, this is nothing against you, but it's just I think don't underestimate the capacity that this planning commission has to bring things to the county council that we can address these issues about timing or funding that you're hearing from staff. And which I get, and I'm totally supportive. I don't want to work with staff to figure out how to fund this stuff. I get all that. But we can do that. It's just a budget. It is a budget thing, and we can do that. And it's a timing thing. We've never got the comp plan in on time in the last 2 cycles. Like, I think we know that. So anyway, I hate to interrupt, but thank y'all.
Okay, but one thing before you go,
I'm sorry.
Can I assure staff that will be okay if we make them work harder and longer?
No, I didn't mean to put it that they're
Exactly
I will just
what I heard.
can't speak for my council majority or
Okay.
just council, but there is the potential for council to fund more money and longer for staff generally to be able to keep work on this stuff. That's a budget thing. That's our council authority. Not we approve the comp plan. That's another thing to think about. Like, it is the county council that approves the comp plan. So it's good to rely on staff for this stuff, but also to realize that there's time, there's resources that council can potentially contribute.
I appreciate that, and I suspicion that Commissioner Hanson has a question for you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make one point about rugs being pulled out from under folks.
Okay.
And that is, if the EIS is conducted and we go into the final EIS process, and then it's found to be inadequate, I think that would be a problem. I think it'd be far less of a problem to start over with some more realistic projections and do an adequate job on the EIS review so that nobody's going to have the rug pulled out from under them at the last minute. And as far as this whole process, the important thing is that we do it right. That's far more important than we do it quickly. Personally, I'm frustrated that it's been 11 months and we haven't seen one chapter out of that consultant that we could be reviewing. But when we start getting those chapters, I'm not going to personally feel rushed to start approving stuff just because of time constraints. I could have been looking at stuff for 6 months if the consultant would have staffed up to produce it for us. So I just want to just say it again. Most important thing is to do it right. We represent the people of Whatcom County. We have to do a good job for them. We're not doing a job for the executive, the staff. We're only doing it for the people of Whatcom County and for the county council. And it's incumbent upon us to do the best possible job, even if it takes more time.
All right, Chris Behe, go ahead. Thank you for being patient.
Sure, you bet. Thanks. I had, I think, 3 separate questions I wanted to respond to. The first was just the general question about why something other than OFM medium. And I think just for Bellingham's proposal in isolation, we felt like the OFM medium historic shares allocation to Bellingham was too low, just over 1,000 people per year when we've been growing between 1,300 and 1,400 people per year for a while, which aligns with that medium high number that we suggested. And that was the number that we suggested is within 100 people per year of what we've actually been doing. So we didn't feel it was prudent to underplan for infrastructure in particular. And so felt like that was a reasonable thing to do. with respect to the EIS, I guess I would say Bellingham is very supportive and reliant on the timeline that's been laid out for the draft EIS coming out very early next year. We're honestly hoping for January so that we can get things teed up to start bringing things to our planning commission and then eventually to our council. If that slides a little bit, we'll work obviously with the timeline we've got, but we are hoping to get the plan approved by the end of the year, honestly, in advance of our council's budget discussions at the end of the year, which take a lot of time as well. So we would strongly support sticking with the alternatives that have been fed into that process. And I feel like it's worth explaining that those low and high bracket alternatives that are in there, and then alternative 2, which is the mixed one from from each jurisdiction. I think what you'll find when you get the analysis back in the draft is that all the pieces are there that we need, and that we can pull them together into a variety of configurations that allocate growth, more growth to Bellingham, less growth to Bellingham, more growth to the smaller cities, less growth to the rural areas. Any of those combinations, I think we can pull apart the analysis and reconfigure things into whatever that final alternative becomes that moves forward. So I would encourage you to rely on the process that we've put together to date. And especially with respect to the timeline, I just don't think there are resources to step back and start that process over. And then my final, I wanted to echo and support the comments that Roland and Michael have already made, and to explain a little bit about why Bellingham was comfortable with that higher kind of medium high allocation for Bellingham. And part of it was the hope that less growth would go to those rural areas and that more would go to the smaller cities and to Bellingham. We didn't anticipate or try and guess what those proportions might be, how much Ferndale, Linden, and the other cities would take versus Bellingham. But we are certainly comfortable taking a larger share if it means less goes to the rural areas. And I think I mentioned that in our presentation at your first session on this topic. Bellingham struggles with the transportation impacts of people that live in the rural areas and come in every day to work and shop. And so the more of those people we can get living in our community instead of commuting in and out every time they need to go to work or seek services, the better for us in the long run as well. So we would say we are also strongly supportive of any kind of policy choices that make it less desirable to build in the rural areas, whether that be impact fees or any other kind of mechanism that might make it more attractive to live in an urban growth area. And that could be Birch Bay or Columbia Valley as well, but just that we would strongly encourage you in that direction from a policy perspective. And that was, again, kind of the hope and thinking behind taking a higher number, was not necessarily that the county-wide total would go up, but that the urban growth area total would go up and the rural numbers would go down. So
Chris,
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, could you just provide an indication, maybe all the cities, of the extent to which your either planning commission or elected officials were involved in this proposal and the population and employment growth proposal?
Sure, I could just speak for Bellingham. We had a joint in advance of forwarding this proposal along. We had numerous conversations with our planning commission over a period of months, and then we had a joint county council planning commission discussion, a lengthy evening where we went through in detail all of those numbers and the different alternatives that were being fed into the EIS and what Bellingham's particular slice of that was. So it was a joint council planning commission effort.
Thanks, Matt. That's exactly what I wanted to provide. Mike Sorbonne, City of Ferndale. I'm here representing my elected officials. It's not my thoughts, wants, or desires. It was coordinated with my planning commission and my city council. The city council is aware of what we're doing, and they believe planning for growth is prudent. I also would ask, if we are going to derail things and push the EIS out, the small cities would appreciate being made whole as well, because most of our deadlines for our grants with the state are tied to deliverables that the county has established. So if you're moving things and pushing things out, It's not just something that could affect the bottom line for the county. It affects all of the jurisdictions because we're all part of the funding, and our funding is all tied to those deadlines.
Okay. Right. Carson Cortez, go ahead. And thanks for
Sure.
being
Hi.
patient.
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Carson Cortez. I'm with the city of Sumas, and there's been a lot of discussion about Sumas, so I just wanted to kind of talk about our proposal and why it doesn't really seem to make sense. And I apologize that it's not overly clear, and a lot of that is due to the fact that there's different timings for when we talk about UGA expansion. That's a huge part of the Sumas proposal, and that we aren't at that step yet. So I wanted to try and limit just to population and employment figures, but it's hard to talk about that for Sumas without talking about UGA expansion. So I think the big thing, and a lot of the comments that I've seen about Sumas have all been around this idea of why are you putting more people in the floodplain? And this is absolutely something that Sumas is trying to figure out. We go back and forth with the county often about what Sumas's future holds in terms of flooding. And a large part of my job since I started working here a year and a half ago has been figuring out what the future of Sumas is with the possibility that the flooding, how it goes right now, might stay the same going forward. So our proposal for UGA expansion includes expanding Sumas city limits to the west and to the south. To the west is up higher. There's a hill slope. So all of that area is out of the floodplain. Those people that would move there would be absolutely safe from future flooding. And then to the south is also out of the floodplain. Those people would also be safe from future flooding. So we are trying to expand our city in ways that keep new residents and current residents as safe as possible. And then within the city, we're always looking to mitigate the damage that's done to structures by the flood. We have exceeded FEMA standards for flood resistant construction. And so I just really wanted to let you guys know what the plan is, that we're not just ignoring the flood situation. We're trying to accommodate it. The biggest issue for Sumas is that everything around us is in the floodplain, and per GMA regulations, UGAs are not allowed to be expanded into the floodplain. That creates a major issue unless it's covenant against future development. The other issue is that everything around Sumas is currently zoned ag. And so if there was no de-designation of ag lands, Sumas can't grow at all, and we're out of capacity. We only have 269 population left in our population capacity. So if we want to expand in any significant way to help alleviate some of these issues with rural development, then we're without that expanded UGA, we don't have the room for it. That is what I have.
Okay, thank you. Todd Donovan, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally don't want to be on my lane, so I'll just comment on process and advisory boards and stuff. So this meeting, like, if you just kind of do the math, the discussion, the conversations, like, I don't know, 10-to-1 staff to policymakers, the planning commissioner policymakers, the council of policymakers. So you're hearing a lot from staff, and this idea that, like, somebody said we were pushing out the EIS. My council has not even had a chance at all to weigh in on what the EIS might look like. Not at all. My council was asked to weigh in on just the population projections for the rural areas without seeing the information you actually had as a planning commission a couple weeks after that. And then we did that, we were told that was by staff, Mark, Matt, like, those are important decisions for future councils to make. So I'm not making any policy direction here, but like, I think the planning commission and the county council, and the planning commission is an advisory body of the county council, like, we've been sidelined. So I just hope that I totally value staff and all this, and staff needs numbers, and they need to plan this, but those needs for whatever staff might need for capital facilities planning for these numbers and such are happening before policymakers are having any discussion about what that EIS should look like. And to say that we're pushing things out on the EIS, my council has not had any discussion about that. And when I brought it up, we were told that's an executive decision. That's an executive thing. So I guess I'm hoping that this commission will consider what staff are telling you and understanding staff's needs about needing, but also understanding as a council, we are like twisting in the wind as much as the planning commission. So that's me speaking as one council member. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Desmani.
I mean, I'd just like to say that I find this to be a particularly challenging meeting because I don't recall many meetings where we've heard from county council members, but I always remember that the planning commission serves at the pleasure of the county council. They appoint us. It's our job to make their job easier, to deliberate in a manner that makes their job easier. And hearing that the process is unfortunately still young, and the inputs to the EIS still have to be provided. The needs assessment for the EIS hasn't been properly done, leads me to the conclusion that the best action at this stage is one that supports getting that needs for an EIS into the process. The best starting point being the Whatcom Environmental Council's recommendation, and also open to additional needs and wants that small cities may want to also incorporate into that needs analysis. And that if the EIS is going to take longer, I'm hearing that, damn it, then it'll take longer. That's what we need to do, because the EIS should inform the growth estimates. We don't want to develop in floodplains. We don't want to develop in a way that doesn't encourage density. So for all of these reasons, I think the focus should be on the EIS related recommendations.
Kevin, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
there you are.
I'm pretty confused on where the EIS is actually at, because I've heard both that it's far down the process and that it's not far down the process. And I've also heard that the way it is currently scoped, we can get the information we need out of it, and also that we won't get the information we need. So it doesn't seem like I don't have a clear picture on where the EIS is at currently. But it seems like it's a pretty big topic that we're having.
I mean, the goal is to hopefully, Mark is the SEPA official for the county and kind of overseeing the whole thing with the consultants, but the goal is hopefully to issue it in the first quarter by March. There's been a lot of, like even the city county planners, as far as developing, proposed growth alternative 2, and the consultants allocated those growth allocations to what they call transportation analysis zones and so forth. They're working on existing conditions, they're working on impact analysis, all of that. EISs take a long time. They just do. There's a lot that goes into it. So, it's down the road a little bit. There's a ways to go. Both are so. But, we are going to have to hopefully get that out in the first quarter to get, a final out in June. So, I mean, under the county code, the EIS and SEPA is an executive function. That's in the code. So we've got, legislative officials and planning commissioners and so forth talking about that process. So, and I don't know, Mark, if you want to weigh in on all of that and maybe the final EIS and the preferred alternative and so forth.
Yeah, we, as Matt indicated, we started this, we issued what's called a determination of significance back in January of this year. And then we went through what's called a scoping process or a scoping document where we had a public hearing actually in the council chambers. Invited the public to comment on what they wanted to see in terms of alternatives to be addressed as a part of the EIS. And we did hear, we got public comment. The county council was duly noted and noticed on that. They provided no comments on that draft, on that identification of those alternatives. But that scoping process then sets the alternatives, right? So our goal was to set as wide a range of alternatives from a countywide population growth, OFM low to OFM high, plus the no action, which would be the existing comp plan, which is below the OFM low. So you've got this, what we call bookends under SEPA. You can make a final decision on any number between those bookends in any form or any distribution that you want. And so it just gives you protection that you have analyzed that from a SEPA standpoint. Whatever the preferred alternative is at the very end is somewhere within those bookends, right? So that's all. SEPA is just a tool to help you make a decision. It isn't a legislative function. It is an administrative function. I am the SEPA official. It's my responsibility to carry out the state statutes on that stuff. So that's what it is. And it is we're under contract. We've been feeding the consultant information and on those alternatives and all these population alternatives. They're analyzing that stuff. So that's what is driving it. At this point, we don't have the time or the money to just stop and start over. That's kind of a non-starter, frankly. And so everything that I think folks are commenting on and are concerned about, even with the WEC recommendations, those are within the scope of the range of alternatives that are already going to be analyzed as a part of the EIS. So the policy choices that the cities and the county make on those are, will be defined as a part of the preferred alternative at the end of the process. Ideally, it would be something close to those non-binding multi-jurisdictional resolutions that we're asking you guys to make a recommendation on tonight. Is to kind of just set the stage, tell the public, here's what we're thinking on how we want to grow. Now you get to comment on that. Now the public gets to comment on that as well and the cities and the special purpose districts then have a target number to start planning for. So you can answer the question of, well, what are the impacts of that choice, right? How much is it going to cost to provide the roads and the urban services for that preferred target allocation? That's all good information to give back to the public. So anyway, that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of what the process is and why it's designed the way it is. It's also, when you're doing a comp plan, it's called a programmatic or a non-project EIS, as opposed to a specific project on a specific site where you're going to have, very discrete impacts can be analyzed about how many trips there's going to be from whatever the proposed use is. On a comp plan, it's at a much higher level, right? You're looking at population growth impacts at a much higher level. So yes, we're going to do, as Matt said, we've got traffic consultants working on the traffic analysis zones based on whatever allocations come out. And then when those get assigned, plan capacity analysis, then some UGA analysis as well of the suitability areas for what should or could be considered for potential UGA expansion. All that stuff gets analyzed in the EIS. And then when you see that, then you'll have a better idea. Oh, okay, here's what that might mean for each city, each UGA. here's where they might expand or they might not expand. You might be able to increase densities inside that UGA and not expand. You should do a combination of both. All those things kind of get analyzed at a relatively high level, but we're looking primarily for GMA consistency issues, right? As well as consistency with our own policies, right? So I hope that, does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Could you say January, February, or March, just to give us some idea?
Well, we're kind of hoping for March. It's not going to be January. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Heidi Good, and I hope that I have your last name pronounced correctly.
Hi,
Go ahead.
thank you. My name is Heidi Goody. I represent the city of Linden as the Community Development Director. I just want to express gratitude to the Planning Commission for taking a look at all of the information. I imagine that it's very overwhelming for your group to look at it as a whole county. And I just want to assure the commission that each city is working diligently on the issues that you're talking about tonight. So while it may feel overwhelming that you need to figure out floodplains and water supply and sprawl, I want to assure you that each city takes those issues seriously. And so the city of Linden is looking carefully at what our population projection would be. We actually started out by looking at an adjusted high number because it was relatively consistent with what we've seen in the most recent years. We've seen a lot of growth. But then looking more specifically at what land is available and how difficult it will become to develop in the next couple of years. With the help of our city council members, we adjusted that down to the medium. We felt that it was more realistic. I can also assure the Planning Commission that we're confident that we can accommodate that growth within our current UGA. So it's very unlikely that we would need to be expanding into Whatcom County. So I guess from a staff perspective and also from the city council perspective and representing their view, we anticipate growth in Linden to be much more conservative than it has been in the last couple of years. We are grappling with some very challenging issues, including water supply. And as Mr. Hansen had his conversation with the mayor, we are working closely with the Department of Ecology on what is a very complicated issue. We want the commission to look at this as a starting point. It may feel like because you're being asked to make a decision that you're reaching a final conclusion, but every comprehensive plan is a living document. It's a guide that we use to move forward. It's not a crystal ball, but we definitely do need a starting point for a population number so that we can move forward. Mr. Donovan talked about, finding other resources. We're in a really tight budget year, and we absolutely need all the grant funding that we're getting from the Department of Commerce. They tie that very closely to the state budget. We don't anticipate having other resources available to us. So we will need to move forward with a conclusion, at least from Linden's point of view. I'm interested in what the county does in unincorporated county, and I can't wait to see, but I just wanted to assure you that in the city of Linden, we are looking at all of the issues that the state is asking us to look at and who we are as a community and taking kind of a moderate approach moving forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Hansen.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that presentation. Well, it seems to me, since we have no say in the EIS process and the county council has no say in the EIS process, we might as well just pass the motion as it is unamended, because it will at least help guide us and council in future deliberations when we're getting into the meat of the comp plan. And then later, the comp plan and the various chapters in there that are going to help implement the vision that is included in this proposal. And I'm sure I'm very appreciative of the cities wanting to take population. I'm really excited that they want to create jobs. And I think we're all going in the right direction on that, but we just can't accept the multi-jurisdictional resolution because it's inadequate, and I think we should just go ahead and pass this motion, and staff can go ahead and ignore point 3 since we have no standing in that regard.
Right, and just to clarify on the EIS, it is a executive, there's different branches of government. That's an executive branch function. However, there was a hearing, there was a public comment on the scoping period, and there will also be a public hearing and a public comment period when the draft EIS is issued. So it's not that, people don't have a right to comment. It's just that there is a comment period and so forth that goes into developing.
Of course. So this could be our comment. If we want to pass this, that could be our comment on this process.
Eileen, can you read that motion back to us again? Please?
Commissioner Mosseri wishes to speak first.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Commissioner Mosseri.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in here as far as policy and process, and it doesn't seem like it's really. I think there's good information in here, but just to adopt this wholeheartedly, pass it through, we're not really helping this process along. I don't feel. I feel like somebody gets to make a statement about where we want to end up, but it seems like it's a burden on and a little bit just disrespectful to the small cities, and just kind of ignoring the work they've done. And I'm not sure that it's really giving much, it's not really taking the input except for from one side that we've gotten and passing it on to the county council. So I also don't know that we're even fully doing the function of advising them on all of the input that we've gotten. We're not synthesizing anything down. We haven't, because I think we've gotten good comments on a lot of different sizes. It just seems like we're taking one, passing it through and moving on. So I'm definitely not in favor of it.
I do have some comments, but Eileen, if you could read that, just because it's been a while since it was made, so we all know what it is, that would be really great.
Okay, the motion that Commissioner James wants is to adopt Whatcom Environmental Council's proposals and move it on to council.
Okay, thank you. A comment that I wanted to make is that we have heard from a number of the cities, the municipalities around Whatcom County, and we have some saying, Linden saying medium, and we have some saying high, but we I'm going to say we're presented with a proposal, and I don't mean that exactly, but of low, medium, or high for all of them. And I think what we heard tonight is some of them want to be in one column and some want to be in another column. And so I just have some thoughts or concerns about it. Commissioner Desmani.
So I'd like to ask a question of staff. Matt, is it possible for you to once again, and I'm not saying you haven't, caucus one more time with the planners from the cities in the room and come up with a proposal that satisfies the not just the comments from the Whatcom Environmental Council, but what many commissioners here have said, as well, about the need to take into consideration everything from floodplains, safety for people and development, as well as environmental concerns for people in development, as well as water supply, and come back to the commission with a proposal that reflects the concerns there, while at the same time also proceeding with a plan for the EIS, how to dovetail those concerns into the EIS that you have on in development, and obviously putting I don't know if there would be any modifications in the projections and in the small cities, but allowing that to happen if need be, and coming back to the Planning Commission in a subsequent meeting with a some kind of a compromise proposal.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two different questions there. One is, getting back with the cities on the population employment for the multi-jurisdictional resolution, and the other one is for the EIS. And I think has kind of been discussed, and Mark, you can weigh in if you want, but the EIS, I think, is kind of down the road in that analysis phase with the consultant. With regard to the, what's basically alternative to the county and city proposals, everybody who's spoken from the cities today, I think, have gone to their planning commission, have gone to council. I don't know if there's anybody, is there any city that this was only a staff proposal? I mean, I don't think that there was.
No.
So, Roland? Yeah.
No, these have all been to the councils.
Yeah, so they've all been to council, some of them gone to planning commission. So it would take a while to do that, to get down that road, because everybody's gonna have to go back to their perhaps planning commission or council or whatever. I guess it's theoretically possible, but it would take a lot of time. Some things there's intractable, like the water supply issue in Linden. We're not going to solve that in the next, month or two. That's been a 20-year thing. There's a dispute between Linden and Department of Ecology. They have a memorandum of agreement. I think to decide it, the adjudication process would probably be needed, So, I don't know if the city planners want to weigh in on that concept of maybe recaucusing and.
I would just, sorry. I would just like to add that we've definitely had an iterative process. We've been working on our numbers for months now and meeting as planners. It was discussed in great detail. So I can wholeheartedly say that from Linden's perspective, we've talked with our planning commission, we've talked with city council members. This is definitely the number that we want to move forward with. And we're anxious to do so.
Councilman Donovan, go ahead.
Yep, Matt. This idea that policymakers have weighed in, I don't know if you might not remember, we actually never weighed in as a council on the 9,000 versus 10,000 numbers into the rural area. We had one extra single hour of meeting to consider that. We did not vote on it. That ended up just kind of into our plan that was inserted. And I went back and looked at the record. We never voted on that. So this idea that policymakers have been already engaged in stuff, I hope that this commission and people understand that that is not happening with the Whatcom County Council.
I mean, we had 3 meetings to talk about.
We never voted on it. We never approved it. You can look at the record. You can keep this whole conversation has been like 20-1 or 90-1 dominated by staff talking to policymakers. This planning commission are policymakers.
I'm just saying we came to council committee 3 times and requested direction. That's my only point.
Yeah, and we gave you direction, and then you said those would be really hard decisions for future councils.
I don't recall saying that at all.
I can cue it up. Actually, I'm sorry. That was Matt. That was Mark. That was Personius. That was not you.
Yeah.
Frank James, you've had your hand up there for a while, and we'll get to everybody here pretty quick. But go ahead, Frank.
Thanks very much, and I'll try to keep it brief. I guess to simplify things, I believe that if you look at the chart in that WC document, there's alternative 1, which is Bellingham, putting more growth in Bellingham. I personally believe that that's the proposal that I think as a county we should do. And I think we should stick with, for the county, that medium OFM projection. And then our job, rather than looking at the top and the bottom, is to figure out how those get distributed. And I think we do need to push more development into Bellingham. That's kind of what they said as well. I appreciate Linden being as realistic as they can be. I think that's very Linden-like and very much appreciated. But I believe that that's the most realistic plan. The Bellingham alternative, the Alt-1 Bellingham centric is what it says. Those numbers don't give the small cities as much growth as they think they want. But it's hard to give them more growth and take more out of Bellingham. I don't think that's realistic either. I think Bellingham has the infrastructure already. They're realistically planning for more infrastructure. They have the capacity to put that dense housing in the place where the jobs are. I think it's a no-brainer, honestly. The second thing I'd say, so that's one, to clarify what my proposal really is focusing on, is that. The second thing is that, you know, if it's January, if it's February, if it's March, I think we want to really be respectful of the environmental impact information informing our process. And so I think to do what we had planned is putting the horse ahead of the cart. And I think we should not do what we had planned in terms of approving the old document. So I believe if we do approve a numbers level, I believe that first column in that chart is the right one to approve. It focuses on that most likely outcome in terms of population growth. It's not wild expectations based on people's aspirations. It's based on realistic, firm numbers. And then how we distribute it, I honestly believe really Bellingham and Ferndale should be taking the bulk of those, of that growth. Obviously, I think we all agree on the fact we want to defer as much growth as we can out of the rural areas in the county, and whatever it takes to do that, because that's the worst possible thing that can happen. I think there's consensus about that. So just to clarify, those are the two things that I think are important in that document if we want to just simplify it to that. Thank you.
Planning Director Personius, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up with the other question that council member or Commissioner Deshmani had about the EIS. The EIS will address, as I said, at a programmatic level, a lot of the issues that the commissioners have talked about tonight, right? So vehicle miles traveled and that distribution of growth, and we'll have traffic models on that distribution of growth around the cities and Bellingham and the UGAs that will tell us we have to address that as a part of our everybody has to address that as part of their comp plans as well to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So,
Cosmos climate modeling. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, the flood models, the Cosmos models are all going to be in the EIS. You're all going to see all that stuff. So I want to make sure that's clear that's going to be addressed. It's not that you're not going to see that and it's not going to be addressed. All that information has been given to the consultant and they'll be evaluated against the different alternatives. So I just want to make that clear that the impacts you're really talking about are going to be addressed in the EIS.
I'd like to ask a clarifying question if I could, Chair.
Go ahead.
Because he was addressing my question. So this commission to do an adoption of the recommendation from staff, we would need 5 votes out of the 7 planning commissioners, right, to make the adoption. Otherwise, we would go as a non-adoption of the recommendations of staff. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go ahead.
That is correct. In order for this recommendation to go through, there needs to be at least 5 votes on this.
Thank you.
Okay. Roland Harper, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I want to echo what the planning director from Linden said, that we've all been working with these decisions with our councils and trying to do this in a responsible way. and not sort of pie in the sky. We're looking at what's happening on the ground and what's anticipated, but based on the reality that we're seeing. And so, for example, I think none of the small cities are anticipating trying to put growth into floodplains. Now, some of our cities already have floodplains in them, and based on FEMA and local regulations, development is allowed in floodplains if it's done in certain ways, where you get people up off the ground and you mitigate for those floodwaters. But no one's aiming for floodplains, and everyone is looking to increase densities, and everyone's trying to be realistic, because we don't want to be having to plan for infrastructure that we can't afford. So I would suggest that it's not going to be a great exercise to go back and try to whittle our proposal down to try to get the Planning Commission's recommendation. And in part, that's because of the timing, that we need to keep our collaboration going. And if that means we're going on to the county council, and I mean, you all have had some good policy to policymaker starting those discussions, and it's tough. Yes, this is good. No, that's not good. This is too high. And sometimes folks are reticent to get into that type of butting heads, but ultimately you're advisory to the county council. If we've not convinced you, then maybe we need to move along and see what they need to help understand our proposals, which we hope are well put together. And the only asterisk to what I just said about not going back and doing that, I mean, if there's a strong majority of the planning commissioners that are in line with the one element from the Whatcom Environmental Council, which is go with the OFM middle. If you want to, put a pin in that, I think that could be valuable, sending that forward, even though I don't agree with that, because we don't know exactly where the growth is going to go, and there could be variations that are worth planning for between jurisdictions. At least I think that's a valuable pin to put in the in the wall there to help give some guidance to your policy perspective to your council. Thank you.
Chris Behe, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the proposal that you're looking at that was submitted by the Whatcom Environmental Council, the alternative you were discussing a few minutes ago about the allocation that gave a larger share to Bellingham, I believe the number is 34,000. I just wanted to reassure you that the third alternative in the EIS contemplates 36,000 people in Bellingham. So the impacts to our UGA and the proposals that we submitted to the zoning configurations that we submitted to the consultants that would achieve that 36,000 number, which is above that 34,000, would accommodate that growth. And so, much like Mark Personius and Matt and others have indicated, we've got the guardrails in the existing EIS to contemplate those kinds of scenarios. So again, it's just reassuring you that I think that the work that we'll get back early next year in that EIS, the draft, will include what we need to then arrive at a final growth proposal.
Commissioner Hanson.
Mr. Behe, did the Bellingham City Council approve this growth proposal?
Which growth are you talking about? The alternative 2 that the city submitted?
And the multi-jurisdictional resolution.
This was the alternative 2 proposal that Bellingham submitted for this resolution, and then again, which mirrors what's in the EIS alternative 2. was the proposal that was discussed and forwarded from the joint City of Bellingham Planning Commission and City Council Planning Committee session that we had a couple of months ago.
But not by the council as a whole.
No, it did not go to committee of the whole. It did not go to before the whole council. It was a joint planning commission, council planning committee meeting.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other commissioner
Commissioner
comments?
Chair Barton, we have Alex Wenger here, who would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead. And can you give his name again? Or he can give his name and his title.
Yes, it's Alex Wanger with the City of Blaine, once again, Community Development Services Director. I just wanted to mention that our growth proposal was approved by our City Council as a body of the whole based off Planning Commission recommendation after a couple different reviews. We've spent a lot of time working on our proposal. I feel like the small cities or all the cities under alternative 2, that's our best effort to coordinate this update, our comprehensive plan update with the county. So we're doing our best to coordinate with all of you through this process. And I also wanted just to mention all the planners here that are this evening have been invited to come. So I want to thank the Planning Commission for this opportunity just to participate in your work session and speak with you. This is a big decision, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Commissioners, what would you like to do?
There's a motion on the floor.
Okay. Ready to vote on it? Okay, so Eileen, would you read that motion one more time?
The motion is to adopt Whatcom Environmental Council's proposals and move it on to council.
Okay. Right, Eileen, would you call the roll, please?
Point of order, please.
Oh, yes.
I've been informed that a non-binding resolution from us doesn't require the same majority as our approval of a comp plan amendment. Could we get a more detailed ruling on that?
Yes. That would be Mark or Eileen, one of you.
What was the question?
I'm under the impression that if we had something legally binding like a recommendation on a comp plan amendment, we would need the majority, the supermajority you discussed, but that for a non-binding advisory motion from us to council, we didn't need that great a majority.
I believe that anything that we move to, that you would like to move to council does need the majority of the whole and not majority of who is present.
Well, thank you. I guess that's the ruling of the chair, I imagine, huh?
I will go with that ruling, but it was a good question. I appreciate it, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Planning Enabling Act here. So it does talk about official controls, which would be zoning or subdivision. And then it talks about comprehensive plan would need a majority of the total members of the commission. I don't know, Eileen, could you look in the business rules to see if this is addressed? Because I think just based upon the Planning Enabling Act, it looks like the majority of total members is for comp plan or, code amendments.
I have a question, Kelvin.
Go ahead.
Well, are we even voting on a non-binding resolution with this current motion? Because there's a lot more than just a non-binding resolution in this. One, there's 3 different potential proposals to review, and there's a whole lot of other stuff in it. So I'm not sure that that's actually what this motion is doing. It's not like we're picking some number to push forward so that would be in the non-binding resolution.
My bad. Sorry, bad terminology. Just a lower level of advice to council than that required for a comp plan or other relevant matters. I shouldn't have messed up the terminology like that.
I mean, that might be something we might have to research and talk to legal about. But I'm just looking at RCW 3670 400 for comprehensive plan shall be by affirmative vote of not less than a majority of the total members of the commission. And then RCW 3670 600, same thing for an official control like a zoning or, critical areas ordinance by affirmative vote of not less than a majority of total members of commission. But I'm just interested in the planning commission business rules. I don't know if we can.
So for the planning commission business rules, 1.5 voting, section A, the planning commission requires a simple majority of those present for approval. An affirmative 5 votes is statutorily required on comprehensive plan and official control. So this motion is vague and.
Yeah, well, it's.
Commissioner Desmonte, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we're still kind of in that point of order space, so we're kind of in a fuzzy space parliamentary procedure wise, but I wanted to just say that as it relates to that, the original motion could be worded as a recommendation to consider the proposal for Whatcom Environmental Council, and therefore it would no longer, it would be just a recommendation, and then we could just do it majority of the participants here today.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, but before we would be changing it. Let's say that we had to have 5 people vote for it. We would be taking a motion that we have on the table and we would be changing it or modifying that motion. So I want to be careful what we do. And I appreciate what you say, Commissioner Desmonte.
So the maker of the motion just rejoined the meeting. He disappeared for a minute, so just wanted to note that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we know what our vote total needs to be?
Well, it appears to me, I mean, we haven't consulted with legal counsel, but it appears to me that it would just be a simple majority because basically the majority of the total commission, 9, would be required only for comprehensive plan or code amendments, official controls, which this really isn't either.
Okay.
So that's Mark. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I would view this as a recommendation to council. And it's not an official control or a comprehensive plan amendment per se. So
Okay, thank you. Okay. Everybody ready? Eileen, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Eisenberg,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Mosseri,
No.
Van Dalen,
No.
Deshmani,
Abstain.
Hanson,
Yes.
Barton,
Abstain.
fails. We have 3 ayes, 2 nays, and 2 abstain. It fails. The majority of tonight should have been 4 out of 7.
Okay. So is there any other business, commissioners?
I just ask a question about this business. Will
Yeah.
the results of this business be forwarded to council, or will it just be just go away? Or will they hear
No,
that
we
we
will-
voted 3-1 and it didn't pass?
We will forward this, Commissioner Hanson, along with the minutes and the vote and the motion, on to council.
Thank you so much.
And Director Personius, are we going to continue discussion on this next session? Next meeting?
No, well, we anticipated, your next meeting, I think Matt's got some countywide planning policies next in the queue for your consideration that we would bring to you in January.
Okay. Commissioner Desmonte, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just would like for the record to have my name be John Doe for that last vote.
Okay. So that is our meeting topic for tonight.
Kelvin,
Go ahead.
I've got one more comment on it.
Yes, go ahead.
Since this is just getting sent through, I would say that through the two meetings and all the comments we got, I did hear a little bit of consensus. It seemed like that largely people were agreeing that maybe that number going out to the rural and resource land was too high, and that City of Bellingham, if nothing else was changed, they said they would potentially pick that up. So even if everybody else's numbers stayed the same, it seems like people would be agreed on that. So whether or not those numbers end up entirely there, it seemed like that trend at least was kind of supported across the board. So just wanted to have that in the minutes for when the council looks at it.
Send a motion. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yes, go
Calvin,
ahead. Yes.
Is that something that we could make a motion on? What Dominic just said?
I would say yes, we can. If you'd like to, go ahead. Well, I'd like to say I got the sense in I'll ask a question. And what I'm hearing is you would like to kind of take some of each of a couple of those columns.
I don't have any specific numbers. I was more just saying it seemed collectively, I heard nobody opposed to reducing the rural lands number, and the City of Bellingham said they'd be willing to pick up some of that. I didn't see, those were the only two things I didn't really hear any challenging on from our comments or in the discussion. So that's why I was just laying it out. I don't have a specific number on what that should be.
Chris Behe, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify I'm not sure if there's confusion on my comments from earlier. Two separate times I commented. The first explaining Bellingham's logic for picking a medium-high allocation for our alternative 2 in the EIS and what we had proposed for this resolution that you've been considering the last two meetings. And that was that 30,000 population figure for Bellingham. And then the most recent comment was saying that the proposal that you were looking at from the Whatcom Environmental Council, which had one option with up to 34,000 allocated to Bellingham. I was not saying Bellingham was necessarily supportive of that, but I was saying that the alternative 3 in the EIS contemplates a figure that is a little bit higher than that. So I just wanted to clarify there's a difference there between what's being considered in the EIS that we can all wrap our heads around when we get that draft analysis back and figure out what makes the most sense across the county versus what was discussed in our joint planning commission, council planning committee session, and the kind of numbers that people are comfortable with in that session.
Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
Just a note, and I feel like we're coming to in a good direction here, that an earlier proposal I had that I did some spreadsheet work with was honoring the Ferndale and Bellingham's request to have greater populations and using their estimates based on higher growth and using the middle estimate to lower estimates for rural areas and Kendall in particular. So I think there's really a great opportunity for us all to work together on this, because I think that we all really want this, the same thing, and it's just working together to make it happen.
Roland Harper, go ahead.
Yes, I guess I'd say if there's consensus about reducing growth to the rural and resource lands, there wouldn't be a particular need to make up for that elsewhere, because there's been a lot of talk about shaving the total number down so it's closer to the OFM medium. So in a sense, if you have less growth going to the rural areas, you're getting closer to what a lot of you have said you'd like to see. Not that you're getting there, but you're heading in that direction. No need to make up for it elsewhere, is what I'm saying.
And Matt, do you need anything else from us?
I guess it's up to you if any more motions need to be made. On the rural question, there is a lot of capacity out there. So, lowering the rural projection will come with implications. It could be, down zoning or, different things that come with that. The EIS will have a mitigation measure to potentially downzone some of these rural study areas, which are rural 5-acre, rural 10-acre areas that have ag soils and so forth that might potentially be designated as agriculture with 20 or 40-acre lot sizes. But even that may not mean that there'll be lower growth in rural. So we're talking, growth is reduced in rural over the last 3 decades pretty consistently. But there may be other development restrictions that you might have to consider in order to get to a lower growth proposal in rural. So just so you know that the implications and the future work that might involve.
And Roland Harper, did you have more for us?
I'm sorry, I did not. You got everything I had tonight. Thanks.
All right, your hand. Oh, thank you. Okay, is there any more comments on that? If not, I don't believe we have any unfinished business, so the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much. You do a great job. It's not too easy.
It's true. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you too, Matt. Really appreciate your input on everything. And all the small cities folks. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Yeah.